If you are completely new to Blender, one of the first things to do is set the preferences. In this quick overview, we are going to look at the options of interest to new users. Follow along and Blender will appear a lot more familiar than it might at first glance. Preferences are set with the User Preferences command from the File menu. That brings up a window with several panes featuring the options. Now, in Blender, every window area can be changed to another type from the pop-up menu. So, to help explain things better, while you can continue working in the Preferences window, I am going to change my general layout to Position Preferences alongside the 3D view. I'm closing other views by right-clicking the separator, choosing Join Area, then clicking in the area to remove. Great, all set. We're going to start where most novice users start, in the Input pane. Here you can change the mouse button used for selection. If this is set to the right button, change it to the left. Now you can use the left mouse button to select and move an object as you would expect. You may have to click again to confirm the movement, and we'll deal with this in a moment. As for the right mouse button, it positions the 3D cursor, which is used for snapping operations, positioning of new objects, and pivoting in rotation. To navigate the view, use the middle mouse button. If you find navigation with the middle mouse button uncomfortable, I offer an add-on that enables navigation with the right mouse button instead. There's a tutorial about it in my channel. If you're working on a laptop, another preference to set here is Emulate Numpad, so that number keys on the keyboard emulate the action of Numpad keys, which are used for setting front, top and side views, for rotations, and for toggling between orthogonal and perspective projection. I'll turn the feature off again as I don't need it. OK, onto the Interface pane. If Rotate Around selection is off, consider switching it on. Tabbing into Edit mode, if I click a vertex to select it, and then rotate the view, with Rotate Around selection turned on, rotation of the view pivots on the vertex. If I turn the feature off, rotation can be problematic in close-up views. The next option that should be on is Auto Perspective, so that when you switch to a perpendicular view, that is Numpad 1 for front view, Numpad 7 for top, or Numpad 3 for right side view, the view is automatically set to orthogonal. This can prevent mistakes in precise work. If needed, you can still use Numpad 5 to toggle between perspective and orthogonal. As a beginner in Blender, you may find yourself using the Manipulator widget quite a lot. By default, only the movement translation component is active. Shift-click the other two icons on the header to enable rotation and scaling parts as well. As you become more experienced in Blender, you will find that these operations are better handled with S to scale, R to rotate, and G to move. These shortcuts can be followed with axis locking and numerical input for precise work. So, to move the box up 4 Blender units, you can press G followed by Z, enter 4. Once you're used to this, the manipulator becomes mostly redundant, and you can turn it off here. You can always turn it back on in the header or with control space if needed. Finally, you can turn off the splash image here as well. The splash features some useful links, also available in the menus. It's up to you if you want to see it. On to the editing pane. The Link Materials To setting controls whether materials are assigned to the mesh of the object, the OBData setting, or to the object block that contains the mesh. Either setting is fine and can be changed in each material. But to ensure that instances of an object can easily be textured individually, the object setting is better. So if this option is set to OBData, change it to Object. We saw earlier how when we move an object by clicking and dragging and the mouse button is released, the object is still engaged in motion. Another click is required to confirm. If it still works this way when you watch this video and you find the method uncomfortable, turn on the Release Confirms option. Now when you click and drag, the object is positioned when you release the mouse button. Next, the add-ons. Every add-on here adds some useful functionality to Blender. Some of them are very cool and well worth exploring, but don't go crazy enabling them all. If you encounter a bug, it won't be easy to trace. It's better to enable add-ons as you need them. That said, 2 add-ons should be enabled if they aren't already. Import-Export, import images as planes. Enable the add-on by clicking the box on the right. This adds a new menu item in the File Import submenu that does what it says, imports images as planes, for such things as backgrounds in your scenes. And the other add-on to enable is Mesh Loop Tools for additional modeling tools such as Bridge, Relax and others. Okay, on to the themes. You can play with the theme presets and settings to your heart's content, but when you've had enough of messing about, remember the button to reset to default theme is in the header below. One thing you might like to change in the default theme, in the 3D view section, is the grid brightness. In Blender 2.75 that I'm using, this is set to the value of 0.251. Set it to 0.3 to make the grid easier to see. This will help when working precisely in front, top and side views. Next, the file options. The settings here will depend on your operating system. I'm using Linux and the setting of most interest is the temp directory. As Blender stores backup files there, the folder can grow large, taking up a lot of disk space. It's a good idea to create your own temp folder and set it here by clicking the folder icon. It will then be easier to periodically check the folder and empty it if required. The Load UI option should be disabled so that no matter what file you load, your interface remains the same. You can always enable the option individually when opening a file if required. If you don't care to have Blender always save an older version alongside your file, then set Save Versions to 0. Finally, the System pane. There are no essential changes to make here except Compute Device. If you have a compatible graphics card, you would set it here for faster cycles renders. The GPU I'm using isn't compatible, so it doesn't appear in the list. Other than that, you may want to increase console scrollback. This isn't an immediate priority, but when you progress to exploring Blender's Python API in the console, you will probably want to preserve more than 256 lines of scrollback. So you might as well multiply this by 4 for a setting of 1024. If you work with sound, such as when editing videos, your sound files would probably have a sample rate higher than 44.1 kHz. So you might like to set this to whatever rate you usually use. In my case, that's 48 kHz. This won't affect compressed output. Popular sound codecs like the AA codec will still deliver 44.1 kHz output as usual. The rest of the settings in this pane are mostly of use when troubleshooting. If Blender doesn't work as expected, the system pane is a good place to check for a possible solution. Now that we've gone through all the settings and made our changes, it's time to press the Save User Settings button and close the Preferences window. And with that, we're all done. There is a lot more to learn about Blender, but I hope this overview of the essential preferences has been useful. Okay, until next time, feel free to leave a comment and subscribe for future updates.